So I talked a bit in another video about my phone sex addiction, and I mentioned in that around the same time I also used to visit a lot of prostitutes. It was all, I guess, part of a kind of, generalised set of behaviours, and I mentioned I was going to do a video on that, and I thought I might as well do it now. I spent thousands on it over the years, or not really over the years, it was quite a short period of time actually, but during that period of time I spent thousands on visiting prostitutes. Not something I would do now, A, because it's rubbish, like it's not really sex, and B, because I just know more now about like human trafficking and stuff like that, so bit of a bad vibe, you wouldn't really want to be a person that someone is being forced to have sex with, but obviously when I was like a teenager I didn't really think about that. So when I was like, I guess, I don't remember the exact chronology of it, but around the time I was like, when I started living on my own, basically after school, it was like just before I went to uni briefly, and like a lot of my student loan went on this. I was only there for a few months, and I like spent the whole student loan basically on like takeaways and prostitutes and phone sex and stuff. And there was also a period before that when I was just living on my own. I wasn't at uni yet, but I was just living on my own. And around that time, basically, when I had like my own space, I would always have a feeling when I get into my own space, like okay, now I can do whatever the fuck I want, but then it was like I didn't have any social opportunities, and like I wasn't good at talking to girls or anything, so I would be like, okay, it's time to like have fun, and then there was like no fun to be had, and I was really lonely, so I would just go to visit prostitutes and stuff, basically. And I'm not trying to paint myself as some sort of victim in this story, because like, if anyone's a victim in the story, it's certainly not me, just telling it how it is, or how it was. And I remember the first time, by the way, I mean, I guess it goes without saying I'm going to describe like sex a lot, like various sex acts with prostitutes and like awkward sexual encounters and stuff, so like if you don't really want to listen to that, then just fucking turn it off. I remember the first time, and I guess in a sense this was like me losing my virginity. I called up. There was like a number. I remember actually it was called Vixens, because they still text me to this day. Once in a while I still get texts from them, and I keep replying like stop text, and I've been getting texts from them for like a decade. And it was like an escort service called Vixens, and it was quite expensive. It was like 120 quid for an hour. They dropped them round to your house. And the first one I saw, she was Brazilian. She was like a white Brazilian girl. She was quite big, and she was blonde. Like, she was hot, but she was like, she wasn't like amazingly hot, but she was quite like very hot for someone to lose your virginity to, if you know what I mean. Like very put you at ease, you know what I mean? Like, she wasn't like intimidatingly hot, but she was nice. And we started fucking, and I came literally instantly. Like, I mean, honestly, like I came probably after like 2 thrusts. Like I was just so horny, because we'd been like briefly like kissing, whatever, and just just her being in the room, like I was just like insanely horny. Like as soon as I saw her, I was just like, Jesus Christ. And because I had at that point, I always forget this. I don't remember. I don't know if I'd even like kissed a girl at that point or anything, like in normal life. I was really shy around women, and I was like insanely horny all the time. So it was like incredibly intense, like this experience, And I came like instantly in like 2 thrusts, and then she was like, she didn't know I never had sex before, and she was like, wow, is that the quickest you ever came? Like implying I'd had sex other times, and I was like, yeah, must be, and just like laughed it off. And I didn't know at that point that if you pay for an hour, like sort of you get the hour, you know, like guys, I guess like I just thought like, you know, I've come, so you know that's the end. Because anyway, I later on, you know, it sort of became more economical, I guess, about it, because for me it wasn't a problem to come like 2 or 3 times in an hour, and it certainly wasn't a problem to come once in 2 seconds, that's for sure. So yeah, I came, and then like she was very nice, actually. She was nice, like, and to be fair, I get the feeling, I don't know, I get the feeling companies like that, like they're not like, I think a lot of them are just girls who are just doing it because they don't really have any other way to make a living. Like I don't think they're necessarily like trafficked, you know, like the more sort of the pricier ones, because there were some that in hindsight I look back and I think like, okay, those are probably the sort of places where people were trafficked. Those were probably the sort of brothels where, you know, those women were trafficked and stuff. I didn't get that feeling from this place, to be fair. They seemed like relatively professional and above board and like whatever, and more expensive. So she left anyway, and immediately I was like, because you know you can't put anything into perspective when you're a teenager, so instead of thinking like, all right, I'm like, you know, 18 or whatever, and it's my first time having sex, doesn't really matter that I came quickly, you know, it's not really a big deal. But I don't know, man, my head was so messed up at that point, in a way that I think is normal, but like, it's like you watch porn and it's like you have to fuck for an hour and like this has to happen and you have to be like this and you have to, you know, I couldn't just think like, okay, well if I have a girlfriend and I like come quickly, like she's not going to care if I'll just come again, and as long as she comes, like it doesn't really, like if you're a grown up you don't really think like that, and also it's pretty normal that at first that would happen, but I just freaked out about it completely. I just thought like, that's how quickly I come, you know, like that's like I have like a problem. And so immediately I called another prostitute from the same company and they didn't have as many options. It was later now, you know, because I'd been sitting around thinking about this like, oh god, you know. And so I called another one, and she was an English girl. She was black and she was like really drunk, and I wasn't as into it, because like she was pretty like loud and shit, and B because I'd already come and shit, you know, and she was like shouting a lot in the building, and I was the weird thing is I was living with like other tenants in my parents' place, and I had rented this place. No, sorry, I'm getting confused. I was renting one of the rooms from my parents, and I was kind of meant to be like kind of overseeing the place, although I wasn't doing that at all. I was actually like kind of the opposite. I was like a total nuisance in this building, and then these other like students were living there, and I didn't get on with them at all. It was a really weird vibe, and I was being kind of crazy, and it was just really weird, I think, for them to have me living there. And I'm pretty sure when this lady came around, they could all hear her, because like, I kept being like, can you keep it down, please? And she was like, yeah, so do you live here with other people then? And like, how old are you? And stuff like that. And like questions that made it very clear that we didn't know each other. You know, they hear like some woman turn up at the door, and she's asking me all these bait questions really loud, and I kept being like, please keep it down and stuff. And yeah. It was really uncomfortable. It was like really embarrassing. I was really uncomfortable about the whole thing. And she wanked me off or something. She gave me like a tit wank. I remember getting a tit wank, and it was just like awful. It was terrible. And actually then I was like, you know, I kind of had the opposite problem then, you know. It was like, I wasn't enjoying it and whatever. So I thought like, oh, okay, maybe it's alright. Anyway, from that day on, I was just like addicted to going to prostitutes, basically. I used to just like go all the time whenever I had the money, and that was all my money. And I used to regularly, like, you know, not have enough for the rent, you know. But just because I was spending it on prostitutes. And yeah, then I started looking for cheaper deals. I started looking for like I didn't want to keep spending 120 quid, you know, so I was trying to be like economical and stuff, and then I would start going to local, like, what it seemed to be was that there would be like kind of pop-up brothels, like there would be like the shitty ones, like they would sort of appear for a short period of time in a flat nearby, and then they would like stop operating out of there, and they were always really fucking gross and weird and had a bad vibe. And yeah, I don't remember how many times, probably at least 20 times I went to visit them, and it was always terrible. I never enjoyed it, you know. It was always terrible. Like afterwards, it's not the sex part that's so bad. That's just crap. It's just boring. But then afterwards, you're just like, oh my God, the money I just spent. Like, it's just a sinking feeling, you know. I literally just spent every penny I have on that. I could have had a wank, you know. The best days were when I would be browsing the website and I would get like really horny browsing the website looking for prostitutes, and then I would end up just having a wank, and I'd just be like, thank God, like that wank just saved me like fucking, you know, over 100 quid. Because also sometimes like the absolute minimum it would ever be would be £60 an hour. That was the minimum. And again, those the really crummy places that had a bad vibe, and other ones, like especially if they were like independent or something, they would cost more than that. And then you'd also pay for a taxi a lot of the time to get there. I'd often end up like getting a kebab or something afterwards. It would cost a lot, you know. And that feeling was terrible. That was the worst feeling ever. Yeah. What else? So yeah, there are a few weird experiences. There was another one I remember. There were a couple of times where they were just like, they were too hot to be doing it, and it was a bit like weird. And there was one girl I remember where it was like, she was from this same service, the more kind of professional service. She must have been new to it, and she seemed like it was just, I don't know, like she was like sort of my age, a bit older than me, but young and like hot, and seemed quite smart. And it was just like, why are you doing this? You know, it was really weird. And yeah, and she just seemed to hate it, and that was super awkward because you sort of feel like, oh yeah, sorry, like sorry you have to have sex with me, this is fucking horrid. And I think, I mean, as a profession, I think it should be legal, I think it should be allowed, but there's something a bit, it doesn't matter if it's legal or if you look at it from a point of view of like, you know, like, because there seems to be a lot of confusion about how people view it. On the one hand, like, even making this video, I feel a bit like self-conscious, like, because it's looked at badly as from a male perspective, like, you know, to go to them. But then at the same time, there's this kind of feminist angle on it now as well, of like, it's a totally legitimate profession and it should be respected, and it should be, I don't think people have quite made their minds up collectively about like how to feel about it. But regardless, I think it's like, for example, if you went for like a massage, like a normal massage, like a foot massage, for example, and you have like disgusting feet, it's a bit gross to just feel comfortable with someone else having to do that, you know? I just feel it's a bit like you're sort of taking liberties a bit, but that is their job and you are paying, and they can, I guess, disagree. They can say they don't want to do it. Incidentally, they always used to have on their profiles, very common for prostitutes to have on their profiles, no black guys. That was like remarkably common. I'm not exactly sure what the reason for that was, but they all used to say, or most of them used to say it, which would be annoying if you were a black guy and you wanted to visit a prostitute, you know. One time actually I went to one of these places at the same time as a black guy. We were both arriving at the same, we were like both, clearly it was like in a residential area, there's no one else around. We're both like looking around, you know, and I was like, are you looking for the prostitutes? And he was like, yeah. I think I said the girls. And I was like, are you looking for girls? As if I was a pimp or something. And he was like, yeah. I was like, oh, cool, yeah, I think it's this way. And then we went in. And as we were going in, I was thinking, right, well, we're in at the same time, so there's going to be like a choice of... And we went in and there were two, and one was like really beautiful, and one was, to be fair, like not very attractive at all. And the woman who was like the pimp was like... And instantly I was like, that one. And just was like, see you later, mate. He looked pissed because I'd been calculating my way up the stairs, like, okay, this is, you know, I'm gonna have to be quick here. And I didn't have to be quick in the end at all. He was fucking dozy. He didn't even think about it. Yeah. But even then, you know, at times when it was like, for example, a beautiful woman, like, it wasn't enjoyable. I don't remember any occasions where I was like, wow, that was great, you know. I don't remember that ever. Like, I don't remember ever any occasions of it where it was comparable to like a normal sexual experience, you know. Like, it was always bad. I don't know, you know, really what the compulsion was. I think it was just pure desperation. I just wanted to be around women and just wanted to, like, you know, like... It's a bit cringy to, you know, but it's not just the sexual component, because you can just have a wank and look at porn, and you can buy a fleshlight, and you can fucking... But people don't want to do that. Like, most people don't want to, like, come inside a sex doll or, like... And imagine, also, I mean, it's depressing enough when you come and you've just spent loads of money on a prostitute, but imagine the feeling of coming inside a sex doll, like, afterwards, the instantaneous regret. And then you have to go and clean out the sex doll, and I mean, that's a whole other thing entirely. But I was thinking about that the other day, thinking, man, that's crazy that people do that. It must be the worst feeling ever. So yeah, but it's not. Yeah, it's not just for the sexual pleasure. Like, there's some level of, like, I don't know if intimacy is quite the right word, because it implies a level of, like, you know, fucking romance and whatever. But you basically, like, you want some interaction from the opposite sex. You want to, like, be around them. And yeah, so bloody hell, what was I saying? Yeah. So anyway, they would often have that in their thing, you know. Yeah, they didn't want to see black guys or whatever. And also, yeah, I just felt bad. I just felt like, oh, like, sorry you have to have sex with me, you know. It's like bit disgusting, really, isn't it? Like, you know, you obviously don't want to. And I mean, yeah, I guess that's the nature of a lot of jobs, you know. You have to, like, no one wants to wait tables and, like, bring people their dinner, but it's somehow different, you know. It is somehow different because it's something that is innate to us, that we do actually want to do with certain people. So to do it with people you don't want to do it to is like a kind of corruption of a natural impulse that you normally have. So it's yeah, I don't know, it's weird. Anyway, yeah, I used to get paranoid about it all the time. So there was one time I was, for some reason, convinced that the woman had pricked the condoms to give me AIDS, and it was just like, it's pretty hard to get AIDS in that way. Like, from having sex, vaginal sex, it's very hard to get AIDS, especially if you're the penis in the equation. It's very, very hard to get AIDS from that. B, from a pricked condom, I mean, like, AIDS is not going to get through there. C, like, it's quite unlikely that she actually had AIDS anyway. D, why would she want to give me AIDS? In my mind, it was revenge. It was like, this is like revenge on men, you know. It's crazy. I don't know. I was fucking crazy. I just smoked way too much weed. So I went to, like, a clinic and everything. I got tested, and I was explaining all this to the woman. She was really nice, and she was the one who kind of went through all of these steps with me, you know, like, and she was just like, why would she do that to you? You know, think about it logically, and, like, you don't have AIDS anyway. You know, we've done the tests. Actually, no, I didn't find out on that day. I had to wait 2 weeks to find out I didn't have AIDS. But by the time I got the results, I was like, yeah, pretty sure I don't have AIDS, really. But my anxiety was fucking ludicrous back then. Like, even if I knew I didn't have AIDS, my brain would just keep ruining my enjoyment of everything I was doing by being like, maybe you have AIDS. Yeah. And, yeah, there were a couple of other times. There was one where I asked one of them out as well. Fucking classic, like fucking cliche, like fucking dickhead thing to do. Because she was, again, like she was like weirdly hot to be a prostitute, and she was like closer to my age, and we were just talking for ages, you know? And I think like she said it was like her first night doing it or something. And I think in the end we didn't even do anything. I just sat there like chatting with her, and nothing happened. And then I left, and I was like texting her like, you know, it seemed like we really got on well. Would you like to go out with me? And she was like, no, you know. Like, yeah, fair enough. Okay, bye. Yeah, I don't know what else really. It's kind of a depressing video. There's not that much to say about it. It was just so depressing and weird and sort of grim to remember it. There were also, I mean, there were the Chinese ones. There's a lot of like Chinese brothels, and I didn't love visiting those because A, the vibe was weird, and B, like the service was kind of weird. That's all I can really say on the subject. Was it was a strange service. It wasn't, you know, what I was used to. And I tended to avoid those. And I remember one time I had to wait ages at one of them, and I was hanging out with these two Chinese guys who were like the pimps, I guess. They were just like playing PlayStation or something. And I was just sitting there, and they were eating a Chinese takeaway, which I thought was a little bit on the nose, you know, that they were eating a Chinese takeaway, but they were. And just kind of sat there with them, like waiting around. It was rare that I had to sit with other like clients. I don't really, other than that time when I went in at the same time as the black guy, I don't really remember any times where that happened, where I was like waiting around with other people. That would have been really awkward. Usually it was very like you go in and you're quite quickly, like they were expecting you, and then they sort of lead you into a room. It's a bit like with cocaine, how the best part is like getting it and the excitement of it, because like going in, you're just like, oh, you know, and they take you in, and usually the person, sometimes depends on the place, but the person at the door is usually quite nice to you, you know, and you feel very welcome, and it just is so different to real life, right? Because like, especially for me at that age, like I wasn't like very welcome around women. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, and to be fair, in general, in life in general, I was just typically did not feel very welcome anywhere, really, you know. And no wonder if I was getting up to stuff like this in my free time, you know, the kind of fella I was. But it was such a novelty, you know. They'd open the door and you'd feel almost like you're at a hotel or something, you know, and like, it's like, come in this way, and then, you know, and sometimes you'd have a choice, or they'd be like, you know, she's in there, and you go in, and, or, you know, they'd say go in and wait and get ready, and someone's coming in, and you just feel like you feel, I guess really it's like you feel in control, you know. You feel like you have some choice in what's happening in your life. You're getting something that you kind of want or have asked for, and you feel looked after is probably the wrong word, but like you're receiving some kind of service, basically, you know. You feel sort of like, again, not important. You don't feel important when you're visiting a Chinese brothel at like 2 a.m, but you feel something, I don't know, yeah, you feel, you know, yeah, it's a nice feeling, usually, like beforehand, you know, before you actually start doing anything, and then you're sort of like, oh, this is crap. And also everything is so protected, so it's like you're having like blowjobs with condoms on and stuff, and it's like, what the hell is that, you know? Like, blowjob with a condom on, it's just ridiculous, really. It's completely pointless. I have a distinct memory of getting one of those at one of the Chinese places and just looking down and being like, man, this is so rubbish. Like, I would actually be having more fun having a wank. And the lady who's saying all this weird stuff. Yeah. One time I went to one as well, and it was like, they were like Eastern Europeans. It was really near my house. I was surprised there was one so locally, because it was like a relatively nice area, and they had a flat really near my house. And I went there, and it was another one of these like fucking grotty shit ones. And the woman, it was like a woman pimp. She was like a really big lady. And yeah, they were all Eastern Europeans, and she seemed like hard as nails, this woman. And it was like they weren't expecting, they'd forgotten that I was coming or something. And she was calling out to this woman, and they were sort of arguing, and like the woman didn't want to like do it. They were arguing in like, you know, Eastern European, some language, something, Romanian or something. And then the woman came in to the room I was in, and she was in a dressing gown, and she was ill. She had a cold, quite a bad cold. And we proceeded to have the most, well, I was going to say sterile sex ever. I guess if she's ill, it's not really sterile, is it? But sterile in terms of the, you know, it was just like real no-nonsense stuff. You know, I remember the feeling literally midway through in my head just being like, not worth it. Just like thinking about it like, what am I doing? You know, like, I'm spending money on this. Crazy. Such a waste. Yeah. Really, I probably would have been better off had I just once in a while like saved up a decent amount of money and gone to a fucking dominatrix or something a bit interesting, you know, instead of just desperately fucking blowing what little money I had on anything that I could afford. It was stupid. Obviously it would have been better to just not do anything, but at the same time, like, I didn't know anybody. I lived it on my own in a town. It was like, there was no realistic possibility, to be honest, of me like meeting women. Like, I was not really up to it, and also the possibilities were not there, and I didn't like have friends to go out with to places and whatever. So yeah, I'm just trying to remember anything else that happened, because I don't doubt there was some weird things I'm forgetting. One time I remember one time actually, my mum was at the house at the time, and it was like 2 or 3 a.m. and I couldn't sleep, and I really wanted to go to a prostitute, and she was upstairs sleeping, and I called one of them and arranged it like really quietly, you know. Then I went out, and I got a taxi to meet me out the front. I got in the taxi, and I was like about 5 minutes. I'd been in the taxi for about 5 minutes, and I got a call from my mum, and she was like, "What's going on? You know, I heard you leaving." And I was like, I'm going to, I was just say this guy's name is James. I was like, I'm going to James's house. And she was like, why? I was like, he's had a falling out with his stepdad, and he's really upset. I'm going over to his house to hang out with him. And she was, I think maybe she knew what was going on. She knew I was lying, but she was like, okay, and was quite nice about it, and just ignored it. And I went fucking miles away in this taxi to a Holiday Inn next to a motorway service station, really far away from my house. I spent a lot on the taxi. This was the time actually with the girl where I think we just like talked, and I asked her out and she said no. It was basically that was that time. I got back really late. And I remember generally after that first experience, like, I would usually be like, beforehand, I'd have to get them to agree. I'd be like, can I come twice? Like, and 90% of the time they would say yes. And if they didn't, I'd just be like, sorry, and I'm not gonna pay for an hour and come in fucking 10 seconds and not come again, you know. So then that became what I would do to try and get value for money. I'd try and like come really quickly and then come again, you know, within the hour. Grim. I think there's a place for it. I do think there's a place for it in society. And I think it can be fine. And I think nowadays, to be fair, the way everything is structured, it does mean that there are some people who basically can't get sex in real life, and and there are also other people who are quite happy to facilitate that in order to make pretty large sums of money, because the pay really, if you ignore all the, like, even if you say very cheap, like say you're working independently, and I know there's all sorts of pitfalls that come with that, but like if it was legal, we'd have various ways of regulating it, and where people are kind of independent, but there's some framework around them to keep everything safe. Even if you imagine the absolute minimum, £60 an hour, it's quite a lot of money. Like, even if you only keep half, you only keep 30, and you do 4 of those in a day, that's like shit money relative to what you can actually get, and that's 120 quid a day. And if you work 5 days a week, that's 600 quid a week, and therefore 2,400, and that's assuming you're keeping half of that money. So and working 4 hours. So really, you can obviously, like, beautiful women can make ludicrous money doing it, and they go for like meals with the guys and shit, and they, like, the guys pretend it's their girlfriend and they buy them gifts. Fucking crazy, man. Like, it's really, I didn't realize how common it is, but like for rich guys, like, it's really common just to, like, they pay extra time so that they can take the girl out to dinner and take them shopping and hang out with them. And yeah, again, I mean, it's like, it's just fucking, you can look at it in all sorts of ways. I'm sure a lot of people look at it in a very bad way, and, but people, women enjoy the company of men enjoy the company of women, and it's harder usually for men to obtain female company. And so if they're rich, they can just bypass all the shit. And also, I guess if you're rich, you have a lot of women who you think probably only like you for your money. Whereas if it's a prostitute, you're like, yeah, I know that she just wants the money because I fucking pay her to hang out with me. And so it's no nonsense, and yeah, it is not, I guess it's nice to hang out with beautiful women, isn't it? So it's a weird thing, but I do think there's a place for it in society, and I think it obviously, well, in my opinion, obviously it should be legal to avoid all the bad shit that goes on, all the dangers, the people who are like trafficked and stuff. It would be much better if it was just legal. I'm sure it's not perfect in places where it is legal, I don't doubt that, but I think for people who are okay with it, it's a pretty good living. Yeah, I can't like self-flagellate too much about having been to them. It would be performative, to be honest, if I did. Like, yeah, it's just one of many things, I guess, that you do when you're young, and you look back and think, yeah, I wouldn't do that now. I wouldn't want to, and it would be not a very nice thing to do. I think, again, like, you don't really want to contribute to anything like that, but I mean, yeah, we do anyway, like, in terms of the things that we buy, the products we buy, the way that they're made, a lot of the food we buy, it comes from pretty evil places. So I don't think there's any point in pretending I think I'm some sort of fucking pariah for doing it. But I used to be compulsively honest about it, and I used to always like tell my girlfriends. I always felt like I had to tell them right away. When we get together, I'd be like, just so you know, I've been with loads of prostitutes. And they'd be like, oh, right. Oh, there was a while where I was really into like fetish porn and like dominatrix porn and stuff, like dominatrix handjob porn and like weird stuff, weird fucking dirty stuff. I'm not really into that sort of thing anymore. But I was when I was younger, because I was a bit fucking weird in the head, and there was a while where I was like, I wanted to get into porn, I wanted to do porn, And I tried a couple of times. I spoke to like companies, so when I sort of started taking the first steps to get into it and stuff, which is funny to think of in hindsight, because in my mind I was like, I'll get to shag and I'll get paid. And then I started thinking, no, I should make independent porn. I should make like fetish hand job porn. And I started trying to consult like various like femdom prostitutes online and be like, do you want to make porn with me and we can like sell it and make money? But I didn't really have the initial startup costs, and I didn't have the money to like pay them to do it. So I was trying to be like, we'll start it together, we'll start a little business, this is genius. I didn't even have a camera, and I was like sending all these texts around about it. And to be fair, I mean, we could have made money doing it, like it was actually a fairly viable thing, and it would have suited me because like my face wouldn't have been on camera, it would have just been my dick, and I would have enjoyed making it. Probably not, to be fair, but anyway, yeah. So I had all these texts in my phone, and I was with my first girlfriend, and she lived in Ireland, and we met online. Both nut jobs, absolute nut jobs, and I went to meet her. I went for a weekend in Dublin so that we could like be together in person. It was so weird. Maybe I'll do a video about that sometime, but I guess it's sort of a bit private. But it was really terrible. It was absolutely terrible, and just awful. And I had this weird thing as well, actually, because I'd had this whole anxiety about the prostitutes, like where I kept coming really quickly, and I was thinking like, oh, it's weird that I like come so quickly. And then with this girl, my first girlfriend, like we went away together, and I remember she sucked me off for like almost an hour, and I just like didn't come. Like it was hard, but I just like didn't come. And I seemed to have this issue then where like whenever I was in like a relationship with someone or something, or had any sort of feelings for them, I couldn't come, or it was very difficult to. But if I was like with a prostitute or something, it was just like, it's weird, really weird. I guess for me, I associated sex with dirtiness, with with shame, and with just trashy kind of dirtiness. I didn't really associate that with intimacy or with like, whatever really. And I guess it's more of a horny scenario, I guess, kind of, when you visit a prostitute. I don't know what it was, but yeah, it was weird. It was really weird. All that shit is very much balanced itself out now, now that I'm older. But at the time, I always had this feeling like I'm so fucking fucked up and weird. I'm so broken, like sexually and personally and everything. I felt really uncomfortable about it. So anyway, we went for this weekend away in Dublin. Fun place. I remember the place fondly, but Jesus, the company. Whew. Shit got weird. We were both nut jobs on it. I mean, we really were both nut jobs. And not really ready to, be in relationships and whatever. And she pissed me off, man, because I was paying for everything. Like, I went to Ireland to visit her. I was paying for all the shit. And I went to the toilet, and unbeknownst to me, she looked through my phone while I was in the toilet and read all these texts where I was trying to organise like fetish porn with prostitutes. But this was before I was with her. I never, I really was like, I never would have done that while I was in a relationship with her. This was from way before. So she went way back in my phone while I was taking like a big shit or something, I guess. And fucking looked through all my texts and she didn't say anything then. We just had a really awkward weekend, and I remember thinking like, God, she's really confrontational, she's really like mean. And I didn't think I had done anything. I just thought, this is just going badly. And at times she wasn't. At times she was nice, and it was like we were like so in love and shit, and we were like loved each other so much, the most anyone's ever loved anyone, woo. And then when I got back and we were talking online and stuff, like we had an argument about something, she just kept causing fights. I guess that was her way of dealing with this information, was to just keep causing fights about random shit, because she couldn't tell me that she'd looked through my phone. And then she did, and she was like, when were you going to tell me about the fetish porn you made or something? And I was like, what are you talking about, And she said it, and I was like, I never made fetish porn, because I didn't, I was unsuccessful in that endeavour. Really, it was just some texts I sent out, and I was like, yeah, I never did, and it's not really your business. And I did tell you that I visited prostitutes, and she was like, yeah, but I wasn't aware of all of that, like, that's disgusting. And I was like, well, you're sort of judging me for my proclivities, like, and that's not really fair, because it's not any different to what I told you, really, apart from just there's a surface level like weirdness to it, but I didn't really do anything wrong. And we broke up over it, basically, and various other things. And I was like, no, I can't be alone. And man, the bullets you dodge when you're young and you don't realise it. You think like, oh, never been happy again. It's like, mate, the thought of even being in a room with one of those girls now is a nightmare. Like I think back to, and I'm like, thank God these people broke up with me, because I would have just stayed. I would have just put up with whatever, because I thought every time I broke up with a girl, I was like, that's it, I'll never have another girlfriend again. No woman will ever look at me or touch me again, because I'm like completely unlovable, and like no woman will ever go out with me. That was my last chance, and I blew it, and then like someone else would come along, and I'd be like, oh. To be fair, I'm kind of surprised I was able to like meet girls at that age. And the girlfriend I had after that, like she was more attractive, and we used to do shit together, and I remember it was so stupid, man. Like in hindsight, I'm like, Jesus, what an idiot. Like sorry if this is disgusting, by the way. It probably is kind of like, but it's just it speaks to how I don't know how bizarre my mum was. Like I remember fingering her once and her being like insanely wet, and me being like, ugh. Like I was looking at my finger, I was like, ugh, man, that's fucking gross. I remember that now, and I'm like, man, I'm fucking what an idiot. And then yeah, we were like really scared to have like unprotected sex, but we both really wanted to know what it felt like. So I put my dick in her for like literally like 2 seconds, and we were both just like, oh my god, fucking hell, it's crazy, and just like I just pulled it out instantly. And it's a good job, to be fair, because I probably would have come like instantly, and she wasn't on the pill or nothing. But we just wanted to try it for a sec, and then I got really freaked out, like thinking, even though it had been so long since I'd been with a prostitute, I remember thinking, like, what if I've given her AIDS, and like I have to know for sure, it's my responsibility. Like, what if there's even a 0.001% chance I've hurt her in some way because I visited, and it's just like, fucking shut up, man, get over yourself, it's just like a narcissistic level of anxiety. And so I told her, like, right after that, like very like horny experience, I was like, just so you know, I should tell you now, I was with loads of prostitutes before. And she was like, right, what, okay. And I was like, yeah, I thought I should come clean, I'm worried I might have given you an STD. I was like, look, I definitely haven't, but you should get tested or whatever. And then I went and got tested and told her it was all clear, and she was obviously like a bit, put off from that point on. It's mind-blowing that I was ever in a, whatever, that I even went on dates at that age. It's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, I was obsessed with telling women about it, and I don't know. Well, I wasn't obsessed with telling women about it, but I felt like I always had to tell my girlfriends about it and be honest about it and whatever. But I guess now it's probably like more. Like, I was speaking to a guy the other day who I work with, and he just randomly started talking about it, like all the prostitutes he visits and how he really wants to be rich so he can have a prostitute every day. And I found that a bit weird, and I also thought at our age it's a bit of a sad thing to want, really. Like, if you've got enough money to have a prostitute every day, imagine what you could do if you invested that money. And imagine just the hobbies you could engage in. You could go like fucking water skiing every day, you know? You could like go on a holiday every week with the money that it costs to see a prostitute every day. You could take like an amazing weekend away every weekend. So it's crazy to really, you know, to waste all that money. Anyway, yeah. That's all really. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I'll add it if I do. Cheers, guys.